It was an ordinary and calm day in the city, where nothing new was happening. From the supermarket, surprisingly, it was filled with shoppers, and in the background, a television was playing the news. A guy takes a bag of chips from the shelf, but it looks like it's defective, and the news says the sky is covered in dust and smog due to recent sandstorms. A little girl next to him says that he is a thief because he steals food that he hasn't even paid for yet, but he denies it. Suddenly, breaking news is broadcast on television that an earthquake has suddenly occurred in the vicinity, but since it was not very strong, there were no casualties. And then they add that this earthquake is starting to gain strength, so it is advisable to protect yourself. There's still something being said on TV, but no one is watching it anymore because something much more interesting is happening outside. Suddenly the ground shook violently and rose up, as if something unusual had crawled out of it. In this place, as if from under the ground, a very strange and tall tower rises at a dizzying speed. All this is very frightening for people. No one understands what is happening here, especially a frightened little child. The whole store is shaking. People around are asking if everything is okay, if no one was hurt. The guy picks up the child and protects her from falling. He asks if everything is okay with her. The two of them look around and see what is happening outside, and the frightened child asks what happened. Meanwhile, a new unknown building appeared behind the shop window, frightening in its appearance. This strange building appeared not only in one place, it is also found in others, including England. In addition, this tower has disturbed people in Japan, as well as on all continents and countries of the world. There was a lot of debate and talk about it, but few people knew what it was or where it came from, and people called it the Nightmare Tower. Suddenly, people were told that they had been chosen to save the world, and those who pressed the button to accept the challenge were immediately sent to the battlefield. They were greeted by the system. It was all like a game. You could earn things and skills. But everyone quickly realized that this was not a game at all, and that everything was happening for real. Very quickly, this tower made itself known and caused unspeakable horror among all people. It happened one day when people were actively working around her. They had some kind of plan. At first, they didn't notice anything, but one of the workers looked up and drew their attention to the tower. A creature on two legs emerged from it, resembling a human, but it was clearly not a human. The creature has claws and a tail, and frightened people call the police when they see it. A real monster with large, very sharp and strong teeth emerged from the tower. A great catastrophe occurred, and many monsters escaped from this tower and spread throughout the world. And from the loudspeakers on the street came panicked cries that the tower had attacked people. The city's residents are terribly frightened and are trying to save their lives and those of their loved ones. And the authorities deployed the army and heavy equipment to destroy these monsters. However, these formidable monsters are not at all afraid of tanks and bullets, which do not harm them. The city is attacked by many different monsters. Some of them are extremely large and strong, while others have wings and can fly. Because of all these monsters that were constantly coming out of the tower, a third of the planet's population was brutally destroyed. And all those who voluntarily wanted to become walkers found themselves inside the tower and could only watch what was happening outside. Since the system said they could save the world, people decided to try. So we decided to try to climb the tower, clear it of monsters, and put an end to this horror. These strong and very brave people were the last hope for the salvation of all mankind. But one day this cursed tower was attacked by people called walkers. They are entrusted with a very important mission. They must prevent the end of the world and the destruction of humanity. However, at some point in their journey they came across a wall. A large stone blocked their path, and there was no further passage. No one was sure that they would be able to break this stone by force, but they tried to do it anyway. But strangely enough, it worked, and they managed to make a hole where they noticed something very strange. There was a shiny blue stone lying on the ground that they had never seen before, so they didn't know what it was. The tower sent a message with information about the Stone of Return. With its help, you can return to the past and save your memories. To activate it, you need to break it. The captain of the Walker, Huang In-chan, was extremely happy to have the opportunity to return to the past. So he said that he would tell about this stone after he used it and broke it with his foot. The bright blue light blinded all the warriors nearby, so they had to cover their eyes. The light became less bright, and everyone looked in surprise at the mountain where a bright point towered. When only smoke and fading light remained in the captain's place, they realized that their captain had truly disappeared. But the only question that hung in the air was whether he would be able to return to the present after being in the past. Former scientist Sakamoto, who was with them, said it could have been much more obvious. He stated that the man had traveled into the past, but due to a space-time rift, he would most likely never be able to return there. He explained everything that was happening based on scientific theories, such as the theory of the multiverse or the theory of parallel worlds. The man stated that there was a rift in time and space, meaning that the Huang In-chan who had traveled to the past was no longer the same Huang In-chan they knew here. Upon hearing this, the men were extremely surprised and found this information very strange and even frightening. Samatoko is sure that Huang In-chan ended up in a completely different time-space, so his trip to the past will not change the present in any way. As far as he knew, all these items from the tower never lied, their descriptions were absolutely truthful. The stone will send them into a time rift, but that's just his theory, and it's entirely possible that using the stone will land them in this very world. But ultimately, the impact of the objects in this tower goes beyond the human mind. And then the clouds thickened in the sky, huge lightning bolts appeared, and one of them struck the tower hard. All the monsters in the tower became active, as if they had been given a sign. A huge number of monsters flew out from all the cracks of this tower. They are ready to attack people again. And before the end of the world comes, the walkers must find a solution, use the Hearthstone, and go back in time. Or they can stay in the tower and try to deal with all these monsters. Then they will most likely die. A huge monster with a terrifying mouth emerged from the wall they had made a hole in. He mercilessly destroyed everyone in his path, and many suffered from this. All those who remain understand with despair that this is the end. They no longer have a choice. Poor people hold these stones in their hands and understand that their life in this world is over. Almost all the walkers decided to use the stone to save themselves from the ugly monster. There are 2 of them left, and one of them asks for forgiveness because they have no hope left. It immediately disappears, but the last warrior is still standing. He has no desire to use this stone. The poor fellow falls to his knees in despair and no longer tries to fight. He has lost all hope. With his hands down and in deep despair, he stands before a mad and ruthless monster. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a very brave man appears, confident that he can handle all this. He delivers a series of quick blows to the monster and releases a green liquid from it and its tentacles. Everything happened very quickly, and the boy cannot believe what happened. This young man looked at the poor thing and smiled sweetly. He always asks if everything is okay with them. The red-haired young man slowly looks around, enjoying what he sees. Behind him stands a whole legion of fighters against these damned monsters. They ask if everyone was saved. The boy looks at his saviors with tears in his eyes, and the man thanks him for standing firm until the end and not running away. It was these people who did not use the Stone of Return who were humanity's hope for salvation. The head of this legion stood proudly among his brothers and urged them to move forward. These are the warriors who bear the responsibility for the fate of human existence. They are called Seize the Day. They are all defeated, their weapons are broken, and the one who remains alive is completely exhausted and wounded. The guy lies there exhausted, finding it difficult to understand at what point everything went wrong as they had planned. Although no one wanted it, many of their brothers died in battle in this tower. These monsters are extremely strong and always different, and it is difficult to immediately understand how to defeat them. The boy steps on the creature and worries about his friend who is planning something dangerous. Jae Hwan attacks the monster from behind while it is distracted by his brother. He gathered all his strength into a fist and swung his weapon to destroy this monster. On the other hand, his friend attacked her and also made every effort to destroy this evil. With their combined efforts, these guys finally managed to destroy this monster. They dealt it a crushing blow. And after they did that, the body of this monster simply turned to dust. Yun Hwan said that fortunately there were no casualties, and that those who were injured would recover quickly after rest. It seems that this tower gave them the ability to heal wounds quickly and painlessly. With such success, they have every chance of reaching the top floor of this ill-fated tower. The guys are smiling happily, and Jae Hwan noticed something interesting from the side, so he got a little distracted. He saw the dragon suppression sword. It was imbued with the energy of the sun and moon. It was forged by the master of the 85th floor in 1,000 days to kill the dragon. The warrior picked it up and admired the beauty and power of the sword. The boy was glad that a stronger weapon had appeared. Jae Hwan looks at the blade with a smile on his face and hopes that they can still reach the top floor. But now, looking back, he realizes that he actually thought that everything was going for the best and in their favor. Now they reached the 98th floor. This is the Purgatory Chamber. Here they met the strongest monster of all they had seen before. Their extremely durable weapons were almost completely destroyed. It looks like the monster simply melted them, and their legion seized the moment was almost completely destroyed. The poor guys couldn't survive this battle. Jae-hwan watches all this in horror and can't believe that it will all end here. At this time, the monster swung its huge limb to destroy another brave hero. He easily throws the poor thing into the wall, which cracks from the powerful blow. The boy screamed loudly in severe pain and appeared to have suffered serious injuries. You can tell from his eyes that he has already lost all hope of moving forward. The poor guy remembers the past, how much he went through with his friends in that damn tower. He understands that there is no chance now, and that continuing the fight is most likely useless. The boy had already lost all enthusiasm in fighting these monsters that had taken the lives of his faithful comrades. But he can't accept that they've already been through so much, and now he's just going to die one step away from victory. Jae-hwan stares at the terrifying monster he has to deal with. But suddenly he notices a brave man very close to the head of a terrible monster. This brave man, this is Yun-hwan. He gathered all his strength to finally destroy this monster. The Seize the Moment Legion warrior is very strong as he manages to pierce the monster's armor. He inflicts a lot of injuries, and does not give this creature the opportunity to destroy even one more person. Yun-hwan calls his friend and asks Jae-hwan to finally pull himself together. The guy tries to hold out as long as possible and inflict great damage on this monster that has taken many lives. He jumps high to deliver another powerful blow. This warrior is trying his best. The young man asks for help because he understands perfectly well that he cannot cope on his own. This terrible creature turned its red, burning gaze on the poor boy. Jae-hwan doesn't move. He still stands in place as if nailed to the wall. He is stunned by what he sees. His friend no longer holds his weapon as tightly as before. This terrible creature pierced a strong warrior of the Seize the Moment Legion. The young man could no longer fight. Jae-hwan screamed his friend's name in horror and despair. He couldn't believe that this actually happened. After this, for unknown reasons, the monster turned in the opposite direction from the guy. It's as if he's running away from something. Something very strange is happening to this terrible creature. The monster broke through the stone wall with its head. It destroyed it with its strength. The young man understands that all this is very strange. These creatures usually do not act like this, so it surprises him. Jae-hwan gritted his teeth and focused all his anger on the monster that took his loyal friend with him. The boy felt that he still had the strength to fight. He had to avenge all his brothers. So the last warrior gets to his feet and picks up his weapon from the ground. He still needs it. The young man doesn't want to let this monster go so easily. He speeds up and quickly approaches it. He doesn't know if he can survive the battle, but he does it for the sake of all those who fell in the fight to save humanity. The Legion warrior uses his power and, like magic ropes, wraps it around the monster. Suddenly he noticed a light on this creature. It seemed that these ropes were causing him irreparable harm. The guy adds strength and makes the liquid flowing inside the creature flow out. Jae-hwan now realizes that the monster escaped because it was already weakened and damaged enough to be easily destroyed. The creature falls to the ground with a loud thud, raising a large amount of dust. The walker puts in even more effort and approaches him at breakneck speed to deliver the finishing blow. The monster could not withstand this powerful blow and suffered a crushing defeat. The creature lies in the burning liquid that recently nourished it, and now suffers from it itself. The young man sighed in relief and turned to Yun-hwan, who explained that it was time for them to leave. But the boy was in no hurry to get up from the ground. He had a large wound on his stomach. The poor guy didn't have the strength to get up. This monster seriously injured the boy. It caused him irreparable harm. Jae-hwan looked at his faithful friend and realized with horror that with such wounds he would not be able to survive. The boy smiled one last time at his brother, with whom he managed to reach the 98th floor of the tower. But this is where his journey ends. He apologizes to Jae-hwan for not being able to go further with him and help him. During the time spent together, the young people managed to get to know each other well and develop a strong friendship. Kim Yun-hwan's smile never left his face, and it always warmed the hearts of those around him. Even that terrible tower couldn't take that away from him, so the walkers began to call him the Knight of the Smile. But at that moment, perhaps for the first time, a smile appeared on his face. The boy understood his end. Jae-hwan's heart was breaking, but he turned away from his friend and asked him to leave. He doesn't want this brave and strong warrior to leave him, so he goes another way. The young man looks down and walks away from Yun-hwan with a heavy burden on his heart, leaving behind only the memories of his sincere and kind smile. The guy stood up with difficulty. He knew that his friend had noticed everything and clearly understood what needed to be done. This stone was in too bad a condition to be used, and Jae Hwan realized this. The young man can barely move. He climbs the steps with difficulty and thinks about his friend. In fact, Jae Hwan turned out to be much stronger than he previously thought. The guy reached his goal and sat down to gather his courage and do what he had to do. He thought that it was Jae Hwan who gave him the confidence that reaching the summit was indeed possible. Yun Hwan gave this world his last smile. He is sincerely glad that his friend stayed here and will be able to finish his work. Then he pushed off the floor with his foot slightly, and what was supposed to happen happened. He disappeared from this world, and now his smile will not be able to warm the heart as before. Jae Hwan will miss him very much. This guy made this world at least a little kinder and better. He will miss Yun Hwan very much and will try to go all the way to the end for him. And his friend will continue to live in the boy's memories until he himself dies. But now he has no time to grieve for his friend. He needs to move on. He must continue on his way because now the fate of all mankind is his responsibility. The young man opened the door to the next level, and a bright blue light shone from there. It took Jae Hwan's eyes a few minutes to adjust to the bright light and figure out where he was. And the next moment, the young man realized that he would now have to fight on a snowy plain. A cold wind immediately blew on him. The boy's clothes were completely unsuitable for such weather. The Seize the Day Legion warrior didn't have to wait long for a new opponent to appear. It all happened so quickly that Jae Hwan barely managed to dodge the icy blows. However, he is not an easy prey, as he managed to get here and overcome various difficulties. Suddenly a very strong and cold wind arose, which almost knocked the young man off his feet. The dragon with a huge mouth slyly asks if his new victim has already surrendered. The boy's hand was covered in ice. Apparently, this creature still managed to harm the young man. But that doesn't stop him. Jae Hwan confidently declared that he will never give up, and the ice dragon took his words as a challenge and struck on the spot. The walker hid from this terrible creature to buy time and try to do something with his hand. The dragon tried his best to find his opponent. Apparently, people don't come here often. The boy sits quietly in his hiding place. He can't let this creature find him any sooner than necessary. This monster has been sitting here for 10 years. He uses some kind of potion to heal his injured arm, the monster's blows causing him great pain. At level 98, Jae Hwan had faced many difficult challenges, but what awaited him here was far more difficult than what he had already experienced. The boss of the 99th floor of this cursed tower is the ice dragon Velhesus. He inspires fear with his strength. The breath of this dragon from the Forgotten Lands is difficult to withstand, even if you have a high level of cold resistance. The young man understood that if it weren't for the weapons and supplies of the dead walkers, he would have no chance of winning. On the 85th floor, he received the dragon suppression sword, and from Yun Hwan, the ice demon armor. The boy sadly bowed his head and remembered his faithful friends, for whom he came here. He gently touched the Fire King's bracelet and remembered from whom he received this artifact. This is from Han Shiel. He suffered so many losses, lost so many friends because of these damn monsters. He was extremely sorry that such wonderful people had to die such a horrible death. An image of a beautiful girl with a warm and gentle look appeared before his eyes. He regrets that he was not stronger and could not save her from death. She did not deserve it. No one deserves it. He remembers with horror how Han Shiel died, unable to survive a fight with another monster, and Jae Hwan couldn't save her or prevent her death, and it breaks his heart. The young man remembered another incident when he was sitting at the table and calmly drinking tea. The man asked him if he wanted to try again, and the young man replied without hesitation that he definitely wanted to do so. Then the warrior boldly and confidently declared that he believed that this time he would definitely succeed. The Atopos blacksmith, whose name was Jae, looked at the young man with interest and was glad that Jae Hwan did not give up. Adipose City was the last one to be recaptured after defeating the 50th floor boss, Alniminus. People did not lose hope. Even when wounded or dead walkers were brought in every day, the priests founded a rescue squad to save wounded soldiers. In this city, blacksmiths worked to ensure that warriors had weapons and armor so that they could fight to save humanity. The guy thought for a moment and decided to note with sadness that Jae now seemed special to him, since he is the last blacksmith of Atopos. But the man asks not to remind him of this. However, he added that Jae Hwan was the only person he worked so hard for, and noted that weapons from the lower floors were no longer being returned. Jae explained that he had little ore left, although there was a lot of it a few months ago. The guy understood that this was to be expected, because there were almost no living people left in the village. He has lost track of time and doesn't even know what year it is. There have been more than 10 tremors since the tower was built. And at some point, people stopped coming to the first floor. It became completely empty. With sadness in his voice, Jae Hwan stated that, in his opinion, humanity had been destroyed after all. The last blacksmith in town looked down sadly and continued his work. Apparently, he too realized that the boy was right. He asked the warrior if he had studied the tower well and if he had noticed anything strange there, other than the fact that the tower always remained the same. This made the young man think, and he still remembered some rather strange things. He noticed something where the wall had been broken and where the return stones had been found. There he saw a very strange inscription which read, "A tower within a tower, a nightmare within a nightmare." He assumed it might be a message from the people, but he had no idea what it might mean. Koval said that 2 days ago Grandma Kylene disappeared, and this information scared him. Time stops in this tower, so if someone disappears from it, there are 2 reasons for this. The first option is that a person used the Stone of Return and found himself in the past. Or there is another, no less terrible option, that the one who disappeared jumped from the tower. Halen from Halen's potion and Jay from Jay's workshop were among the few remaining walkers. The blacksmith tries not to show that he is sad or worried about her. But Jae Hwan understands that underneath this mountain of muscles, this strong man hides a gentle heart. Suddenly the boy asks his blacksmith friend to teach him blacksmithing. The man's hand trembled when he heard such a bold request from this young man. Jae didn't answer, apparently needing more time to think about the request. And Jae Hwan waited patiently for an answer. He sincerely wanted to master this difficult task. A seize-the-day Legion warrior emerges from his hiding place, ready to continue the fight. The dragon reported that since the tower was built, no one had climbed to the 99th floor alone. The ice dragon Velhesis declared that he recognized in this boy an amazing person, but the young man did not want his skill to be recognized by some monster. The boy teased the dragon, saying that it would even hurt him if he died, since he knew his abilities, but the dragon explained that this was impossible. The young man doesn't believe the words of this overgrown lizard, so he grabs his sword and is ready to prove him wrong. Jae Hwan asked the dragon with interest why he was so confident. He is smart and observant enough to notice flaws in his opponent's defense. So he declared that even the armor that the dragon was so proud of had already cracked. The arrogance of this young man greatly irritated the overgrown ice lizard. So he aggressively declared that it was time to put an end to this senseless chatter and was ready to strike. And the next moment there was a very strong blow. The dragon used the power of his breath. This did not pass without a trace for the boy. Crimson drops appeared on the white snow. The poor guy was in a lot of pain from his breath. It seemed like their fight ended at the very beginning. The dragon chuckled and asked if this worthless man had really decided to fight to the end. Jae Hwan remembers his loyal friends who died in this fight for humanity. The dragon hypnotized the boy. He believed that even if he stood firm to the end, he would only receive loneliness. The ice figures, who look like his faithful friends, seem to encase him in ice. They do this at the will of the monster. This lizard-like echidna watches as the boy slowly dies in her clutches. The brave boy sighed heavily and declared that the dragon had been sticking out his tongue for too long. And then he put in a lot of effort and managed to free himself from the captivity of these ice sculptures. The dragon aggressively asks if this little man has decided to attack him again. He calls on the walker to surrender because he himself will never be able to defeat such a large and strong dragon. Jae Hwan went to the tower later than everyone else, so he missed out on a lot of different skills and hidden abilities. That's why he decided to give up all skills and focus on just one thing. His only skill was to attack the enemy, and he did it over and over again. Thanks to this lunge, he managed to kill over 50 million monsters, and his brothers gave him the second name, Lunge. Over time, the guy realized that his skills were changing. He was becoming faster, more accurate, and stronger, and as a result, he gained such strength that he became more effective than any hidden skills. This technique was not a skill that took away strength, so the boy did not get tired in battle. But despite this, it was still difficult for him. Jae Hwan had already made 100 attacks, but he had only managed to make one small dent in this dragon's armor. It was clear that this creature would not tolerate such a thing. The dragon immediately prepared for his powerful icy breath. The walker realized with despair that he had no time to evade. But suddenly, at the last moment, he noticed something very interesting, and it gave him hope. Jae Hwan noticed a light coming from the wound on his opponent's neck. He remembered everything that happened on the 98th floor and how he defeated the previous monster. The guy realized that he had already seen this same light on another monster, and this was great news. The walker has already gripped his weapon much more boldly and tightly. He hopes that he has a chance. So without hesitation, he takes advantage of the moment and attacks the dragon with his signature attack. The warrior hit the target accurately. His sword pierced the enemy and destroyed his armor. Now Jae-hwan knows for sure that he can do it. He is full of confidence in it. The wounded monster was very angry. He did not understand how this insect dared to do such a thing. But the young man smugly declared that he had not hit hard enough and that he should have simply torn the monster's head off. The ice dragon has spread its wings and does not want such a situation to happen again. He stood tall and declared menacingly that this time he would wipe him off the face of the earth. And without thinking twice, the dragon used his icy breath to destroy his offender. The poor guy barely had time to dodge all the attacks. If even one had hit him, he would not have survived. This is a very difficult test for Jae-hwan. He barely dodges. The boy is surprised that this monster can make such powerful attacks. With great disappointment, he realized that there was no chance of winning. The dragon has cornered him, and he won't be able to defeat this creature. But the monster looks pitiful, its jaw hanging open after being wounded. He explains that if at least 10 pedestrians had come here, they would have dealt with him. And he added that if people had not been deceived by the dream demon stone, everything would have been completely different. The boy doesn't understand what stone the dragon is talking about, so he asks him what he means. However, it is clear that he will not explain anything, but will immediately attack the guy. Jae-hwan does not wait for his death peacefully, but runs away from this dragon. This monster just watches as the guy who maimed him simply disappears. He has reached the door through which he came here. This will be his salvation. The warrior left this floor and closed the door tightly behind him to make sure that this creature would not appear here now. He understands perfectly well that he was a millimeter away from falling. If the claws of this monster had reached him, he would not have survived. Jae-hwan remembers the dragon's words about the dream demon stone, but he can't understand what he was talking about. What kind of stone was it? How did it deceive everyone, and what could have been different? Many questions immediately arose. The warrior was glad that he managed to get out of there alive, but he still returned after 5 years. This time he was much stronger and better prepared for this fight, because he already knew what awaited him. The system bombarded him with various messages congratulating him on completing a new level. This time he managed to destroy this monster, so the guy received many congratulations on reaching the 99th floor. Jae-hwan looked at what was left of his opponent and asked what the dragon dreamstone was. This creature answered with the last of its strength that it knew the answer to its question without him. But he added mysteriously that he would understand everything when he found himself on the top floor. As a reward for completing the level, the young man received a new weapon, the Ice Dragon Sword. This weapon is infused with the breath of the Ice Dragon, and can determine when its wielder is ready for battle. Suddenly, the young man looked down and noticed that something very strange was happening on the ground. Some substance that flowed out of the ice dragon begins to move and rise upward. She rose very high and formed a door right in front of the brave warrior. And at the very top, the number 100 was formed, indicating that this door leads to the top floor of the tower. The guy took a deep breath and collected his thoughts. He was ready to boldly move forward. Without thinking twice, he goes inside, not knowing what will happen to him next. After the boy walks through the door, the number 100 slowly turns into some other inscription. In its place appeared hieroglyphs, indicating that a control room was hidden behind the door. Jae-hwan had already peeked out the door and was looking around with genuine interest. And he was very surprised by what he saw there. Probably the guy expected to meet another monster there. But what I saw there was something completely different. A multitude of different screens and photographs showing the tower and the city. The young man came closer. He was very interested in examining all this and looking at the tower from the side. All these pictures depict places he has already visited. The boy sees the place where the walkers should come. He also sees a topos, a city where those who have not yet perished at the hands of monsters live. He was so focused on these images that he didn't notice someone approaching him and saying they were glad he had come. Jae-hwan looked around and immediately got into a fighting stance, and the voice said that he thought the boy would return to a topos first. And then he calms him down and explains that he shouldn't worry because he completely forgot about him and didn't have time to prepare everything. The boy received a message that surprised him because it said that he was the first to complete the training of the 294th world. His achievements were recorded in the immortal Akashic records, and this record will be visible to the monarch of the great land. The guy read it and realized with horror that it was actually a workout, although it didn't look like one. He is overwhelmed with emotions, and they turn into water that envelops the poor guy. The warrior was extremely excited. A large puddle of water had already formed under his feet, caused by his stormy emotions. The voice asks if he is surprised and hopes that the boy will soon recover from the shock. A huge wave of water rose up around the young man, ready to swallow him up. The creature smiles slyly and remarks that if he does not cope with his emotions, they will consume him. And then the lion head with bright eyes adds that it is probably too late to pull yourself together. And he tries to explain to the guy that there is no reason to be too upset, because he achieved a good result, considering that he is an ordinary person. However, this brave warrior did not give in to his emotions and tried his best to calm down. His stony expression shows that he is in a state of complete calm. His interlocutor is surprised because the guy came to his senses earlier than he expected. The young man unceremoniously, and without mincing words, asks what kind of creature this is and who he is anyway. Then he remembered that he had not introduced himself at all, because he was very glad that this young man had reached the 100th floor himself. Such cases had never happened before. He said that his name was Devil Bystrian and that he was the master of this tower. The warrior noted that if this was just training, then the game itself had not even begun yet. The demon smiled slyly and noticed that the boy had a sharp mind. But first he wanted to show him something. And the next moment he clicked his paws with sharp claws, showing what he had prepared. A large screen appeared in front of him, showing people who were in the tower for the first time and looking around in surprise. The guy watches the video carefully, which shows how he started his journey. These are his memories that show him how he met Seal, how she joined their group. Bystrian slyly noted that at that moment they looked quite happy. He then recalled joining the Seize the Day Legion and talking about how his head was not a weapon, but a sword. These were quite difficult memories for the boy, because everything that happened in that tower was terrible. And the creature noticed that this young man would never again see the faces of his faithful friends. The video shows their difficult battle with monsters, in which many people died. Then, at that moment, no one expected that everything would turn out exactly like this, and that this would happen. Among all those who died in this battle was Seal, for whom the boy fought very hard. He was overwhelmed with emotions. He didn't want her to die. These were very difficult memories for him. And after that, he was shown a video of the death of his faithful friend, and the demon noted that it was a very touching story. He asks the young man how he feels and whether he has tears of anger or disappointment, and suddenly adds that she can give him a second chance, but the guy looks angry, not hopeful. The creature smiles ominously and explains that the boy will have the opportunity to play the game again. He tries to console the guy and adds that this is a great opportunity for him. Like a cunning snake, he convinces the boy that he will be able to relive everything, knowing what awaits him, and adds that in the world of people, this is only possible on the pages of books. Instead, Jae Hwan wonders in horror if this is the end because he expected all this horror to end someday. He doesn't understand. Wasn't he supposed to save the world after taking over the tower? Or was he really being deceived this whole time? Now the warrior understands that in reality humanity had no chance to save itself and survive. All this time they have been trying hard and very persistently to do everything in their power. All this time, people continued to try to capture the tower, dying one after another. All this was for the sake of saving humanity. They all firmly believed in it. They were convinced of it. And only now the boy understands that all this was just a false hope for salvation. The young man is under the power of this demon. He does not think long before answering his offer. The guy very confidently and loudly answered that he would never return to the past. This answer from this, as it seemed to him, pitifully worthy man somewhat surprised the owner of the tower. But suddenly he began to bare his sharp teeth and mock this young man with a grin, and this laughter turned into a loud and crazy laughter that filled the entire room. In fact, he was very amused by the boy's idea that he could go back in time. So he decided to explain one very important thing to this brave warrior. The demon stated that no object or artifact could send him back in time, and there was nothing powerful enough to turn back time. But Huang doesn't understand how this can be true since he himself saw the stone of return. And immediately after these words he understands what the ice dragon meant. The dragon's words echoed in his head, saying that people had been deceived by the dream demon stone. The guy remembers this stone and the description that the system gave him, and with horror he realizes that it was a lie. The creature explained that it was not actually a return stone, but the dream demon stone. He is not able to return a person to the past. he simply locks him in demonic dreams. Bystrian explained that he could not even imagine that people would want to go back to the past and fix it so much. The demon then added with great sarcasm that only humans are subject to such obsession. Jay Huan, with great sadness and memories of the people who used this stone, noted that this is true. When they had managed to resolve all these issues, the demon announced that the real game could now begin. But she explains that this is not a return to the past, but a start of this game from the very beginning. The boy was asked if he wanted to start the game, and to the demon's great surprise, he refused to play. Jay Huan didn't think twice because he knew full well that this was just a clever manipulation. The brave warrior explained that thanks to the master of the Tower of Horrors, he understood a lot. A new report has emerged that the Tower of Terror, also known as the Tower of Regret, is created by a dream demon and is placing walkers in artificially created dreams. The young man explained that he had already been in the dream demon's dream and would not return there again. And that is why the boy grabbed the weapon and boldly declared that he would kill the owner of this tower. He did not believe in the cunning and insidious plan of this monster. The warrior was going to kill him and leave. The creature took a deep breath and explained that there was nowhere else to go. This was the end of the tower, although the boy stated that he didn't trust anyone anymore. The demon asks if he is really that bothered by the existence of fake items and achievements. But the boy does not listen to what this creature is trying to tell him, and immediately strikes. This creature is left without a head, but this does not stop it from continuing to speak. The demon, thanks to his powers, tries to turn his head and asks what the warrior wants. He can give him skills or artifacts, whatever he wants. In the end, the young man had come a long way and deserved a reward, but Huang replied that he did not need anything. Bystrian slyly asks if he wants to return to his previous normal life. The demon explains that he was a prisoner in the Tower of Horror's dream, and therefore no monsters exist in reality. Huang doesn't understand how these monsters can't exist. The creature snapped its fingers and the boy saw ordinary life before he came here. People are chatting peacefully, preparing to go to the cinema and discussing films. The guy doesn't understand what's happening. How could this happen? Was he really that fooled? Suddenly there was a strong jolt and Jay Huan was suddenly moved to another place. He found himself in public transport, similar to a train. The guy was amazed by everything that was happening here. In reality, no one died, the earth did not turn into a desert, and most of humanity did not disappear. The demon noted that it must be great news for him that his friends and relatives were not killed. Bystrian snapped his fingers again to move again, and wanted to show him the most important thing. He saw many hospital beds where patients still lay, unconsciously connected to various machines. The young man moved closer to the hospital bed to get a better look at what was happening. He saw himself on the bed, connected to the machine. The guy was very impressed by this. The demon explained that decades had passed in the Tower of Terror, but not even a month had passed in the human world. The creature noted that the boy would never be able to defeat him because he could barely lie down during training, and he added that there was a huge gap between people and dragons that he would never be able to overcome. Jay Huan boldly stated that it was a great relief to him to learn that the creature was a dragon. He announced his sword and said that he had fought dragons before, so he wouldn't have any problems. The demon was very angry. He did not like such impudence on the part of this pathetic creature. A brave warrior entered into a fight with a very powerful creature, and who knows how it might end. The heavy wooden door opened, letting a little sunlight into the dark room. Jay Huan comes in completely exhausted and with severe wounds. He calls Jay and tells him that he's back. But the room where Koval was most often looks as if no one has been there for a very long time. However, the main character needs weapons to fight all these evil demons. So, using the knowledge his friend shared, he tries to make himself a good sword. 72 days passed. The warrior fought the dragon every day, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not leave even a scratch on it. But on the other hand, Huang didn't die either. For reasons unknown to him, the dragon didn't kill him. The control room shows a video of a guy working in a forge and thinking that no matter how long it takes, he will achieve his goal. The dragon watches this young man with great interest. He is very surprised and even amused by him. He believes that he should keep it for himself because it is a good product that can be sold successfully. This dragon had been cultivating for a long time, and this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. A farmer is a being who must ensure that the product is delivered to the mainland through secondary processing, that is, by sifting out the worst, the product becomes better. And it is during the training that the best products are selected. which are then turned into real games. But suddenly one product appeared that refused to move to the next stage. Anyone in the Tower of Terror can be killed without any consequences. Their souls are still alive in the real world, so it can be assumed that no one has died. But there will be a lot of problems if he accidentally damages the soul of his product. The Reapers, who are closely monitoring all of this, will never forgive him for such a mistake. Therefore, the dragon believes that he needs to sell it as soon as possible. It's time to move on to the next level, because he still has to pay off the debt for buying the tower. He is such a special product that even gods who have no connection to the demon world contacted him about this guy. Suddenly, at this moment, when the demon was calmly pondering these things, Huang appeared and attacked again. The creature easily repelled his attacks and stated that this guy was driving him crazy. He asks ironically if this war is not enough to continue this useless struggle. The demon remarked that he had better start the real game and spend his power usefully. The next moment he repeated his signature finger gesture and was ready to show off his tricks. Literally a second later, he disappeared from the boy's field of vision, and he does not understand how this happened and where the dragon went. Suddenly a mirror appeared in front of him, in which he saw his reflection, and behind him, a dragon. The guy doesn't stop fighting. He swings his sword and is ready to strike again, even if it is useless. The poor guy is trying his best. He is definitely not the kind of warrior who gives up easily. The next moment, this block, which served as a mirror, shatters into pieces from a strong impact. Huang was injured, his head was damaged, and he has difficulty coughing. The angry dragon grabs the boy by the neck and asks what he wants and why he continues to insist on his own. The guy explains that he will kill the dragon and move on, which even disappoints Bystrina a little, and he asks what he needs to do to make him agree to the game. Huang chuckled. He saw that the creature was already on the verge of fainting, and quietly praised himself for being able to hold out for so long, and explained that he wanted to ask for something. The dragon is already sitting calmly and explaining to the boy that the universe does not consist of only one dimension, but he calmly replied that he knew about it, and added that he also knew about parallel incarnations and the multiverse. But the demon wants to clarify something and says that there is one main dimension, the almighty Earth. And then he explained that it was from this great land that many different alternatives branched off. The Earth is a small planet in a large dimensional system consisting of a large number of alternatives, and they called these actions the 294th world. In the Tower of Terror, walkers can gain skills, obtain various items, and level up. In this way, they will be able to adapt to the structure of the mainland and thus have a chance to enter another world. And various evil demons like him have the ability to control this game. But the guy doesn't understand at all why he's doing this, why the demon needs it. The dragon noted that it was a good question, but he didn't think it was something he really cared about. Bystrian snapped his fingers in his usual gesture, and it seemed like the tricks were about to start again. But they find themselves in a ruined city and ask a question that really interests the guy. So he wants to explain why, out of all the alternate worlds, the Tower of Terror ended up on Earth. The dragon asked if this was not what interested the young man most, why he and his family were forced to face this, and then he gave a very short and quick answer that their world was chosen at random. But this guy said that he was asking about something completely different. He was interested in why he was running this tower. The demon was very surprised, and the young man continued to ask what benefit this tower would bring him. His interlocutor thought for a moment and explained that it was something like his passion or even hobby. And then I realized that this guy didn't seem to really believe his own words, and didn't understand that demons also have hobbies. He then explained that among them, there are those who simply enjoy watching outstanding walkers, and there is also a place called Paradise where monsters and demons live alongside humans. And to make his point completely convincing, he showed the bishop's message, which said that the boy should not be killed. And then he smiles slyly and asks if he believes him now. Huang didn't answer, he just watched because he thought it was all complete nonsense. The walker found himself on the 99th floor, where he had already defeated the ice dragon and received a message that he had reached the maximum level of 100 and all his stats were at maximum. The guy was in terrible condition. He was badly injured, so he drank a potion to recover. He looks at this message with terrible despair and realizes that he now has no purpose. But he still can't tame this monster, the master of the Tower of Horrors, although he really wants to do it. The warrior lay down on the cold ground in despair, wondering what to do next and how to understand what is real and what is not. Jae-hwan ponders whether humanity can truly be destroyed and how he will know. Perhaps everything in this world is destroyed, but some alternative version continues to live peacefully. And at that moment, the boy felt something very strange. He had never experienced anything like it before. This alarmed him, and Hwang thought that something very strange had happened inside. And then his attention was drawn to some very strange yellow light, which was definitely not there before. Bright yellow substances began to appear in the air, and the main character even thought that perhaps it was a hallucination. Jae-hwan hesitated a little, but still tried to touch the strange things in the air. As he examined the substance, he squeezed it in his fist and it seemed to crumble into small particles. These small particles were first shaped into Zycra cubes and then immediately crushed. The guy believes that these particles are the components of the world, and it doesn't matter what shape they have. Then he remembered the bishop's inscription that the demon had shown him, and he began to gradually understand what was happening. The warrior frowned and realized that he was just entertainment for the stronger life forms in this universe. Suddenly, a demon appears in front of him, and the boy asks who the monarch is and if he is the one in charge. And he tried to explain briefly and clearly that monarchs are observers of a large country. Those who manage to complete the game are sent to the mainland and receive the support of the monarch. Jae-hwan didn't quite understand what this meant, so he asked again to get a more precise explanation. The dragon stated that the boy's future could change dramatically depending on the monarch chosen. And then he promised that if the boy obeyed him, Bistrian would use all his strength to help him get to the great monarch. But the demon noted that this would only happen if the young man agreed to play the entire game to the end. Jae-hwan noticed that the creature now spoke like an annoying store clerk. And the next moment the guy agrees to join the game, but will do so only after 10 days. 9 days have passed, and the boy is still training with the sword to be in top shape before the game. The demon sits calmly in his control room and watches all the actions of the young man. But he is looking forward to it. There is very little time left, and he remembers that he bought this tower because he was deceived. These memories made him angry because he remembered how false they were. He was told that the tower had been built by the Lord himself, and that it was so old that its value could hardly be overestimated, so it would definitely be a good buy. But he regrets that there is no function to voluntarily exit the game while keeping all your achievements. And now he himself is trapped in the tower, unable to exit the game because Hwang refuses to move on to the next level. He sat there in despair for so long and had already resigned himself to his unhappy fate. But finally, all this will end tomorrow when Hwang starts the real game. The warrior received a message asking if he wanted to return to World 294 without losing his memory and start the game. The dragon is looking forward to the moment when the guy confirms the application. He is very excited. But completely unexpectedly, the guy attacks him. The main character still wants to kill the demon. He asked with great surprise what was going on here and why Jae-hwan was doing this. The guy had been dreaming about this for a long time and had been training for a long time. He deliberately took his time in order to prepare well. The walker holds his weapon tightly in his hands and makes a remark to the demon, which he could have guessed. The young man, with a threatening expression on his face, explained to his enemy that from now on he would hunt him. With these words, he strikes his opponent again. The guy is very confident in his abilities. He noticed that after hallucinating these gold particles, it became more difficult for him to control the sword. But he explained that every time he tries to take a shot, he gets a very strange feeling. The guy thinks it's like waking up, like he's breaking this dream. Therefore, Jae-hwan does not intend to stop and stubbornly continues to attack this creature. The main character, with a smile on his face, waves his sword and declares that this is the feeling of life. However, a magical symbol appears under his feet, which the boy does not notice at all. In place of this symbol, a huge tree immediately grew, which the boy saw on the 91st floor. It is called the Black Iron Tree. The monster regenerates his arm and explains that this should have happened a long time ago, adding that he has never seen anyone like this guy. The dragon smiles slyly and watches with pleasure as they do this to the boy, paying a huge price for it. The protagonist finds himself completely trapped in the iron roots of the breeder tree and wonders what this creature plans to do with him next. Bistrian calmly replies that this walker will not be able to finish the game without his permission. The demon finally abandoned all attempts and hopes of convincing this stubborn warrior. But I decided to try again and asked why the guy decided that his studies should be continued. However, he added that the Tower of Horrors will automatically close after 100 days of training. The dragon explained that he needed the boy to survive, so he needed to complete his training and move on to the game. The boy has no intention of staying there alone, so he calls on the demon Bystrina to stay. The protagonist stated that on this vast land he is called the Sanctuary of Irritation. The guy knows a lot about this monster. He says that it lived 784 years and visited 128 worlds, and now continues its vile selection among the walkers. The demon cannot believe what he hears and has no idea how he knows all this information. Jae Hwan boldly asks if this bastard was planning to hand over his mathematics to the Black Monarch. The monster asks in surprise where he knows all this from. How can he know all this? The boy saw golden letters, a message from the demon to the Black Monarch that the selection would soon be over if he could convince the farmer. The main character explained with a sly smile that he was the one he had been waiting for so long. Suddenly a bright light appeared and the warrior managed to free himself from the shackles of the iron tree. And freed from the roots, the boy attacks the monster that imprisoned him there. With just one blow, the demon Bystrin lost his arm, but this time he was very surprised and frightened by it. Something very strange has happened. Will this guy really be able to defeat his opponent? The protagonist uses his power again, but this time the enemy defends himself. It seems that Jae Hwan managed to injure the demon the first time, so now the demon is holding his hand. He can't believe that this idiot managed to give him such a cancerous tumor on his arm. The expression on his face reflects all his confusion and shock at what happened. The walker holds a very strange sword in his hand that emits a blue light, as if it is enveloped in something. There are some very strange things happening around. It feels like the game has started to reboot. The guy looks very confident in his abilities, so he stands proudly and stares at the demon Bystrina. When he reached the 100th floor, he began to wonder what it all meant. The main character began to doubt whether this was really a dream. He then wondered if the demon really could not or would not kill him. Then he wondered if he could be reborn after death, and he had many questions. The elements of this world crumbled into particles and text appeared. The warrior watched the demon carefully. And now, after a long period of doubt, Jae Hwan has finally reached the stage of absolute certainty. He has discovered something new, penetrated into understanding through and through, and now he can use this powerful force. The vortex of energy quickly approached the demon and very easily and completely destroyed his defense. The dragon was surprised by the abilities of this walker and became very angry with him. This creature opens its mouth with large fangs and asks what is going on here. The system issued a message about the lifting of temporary restrictions, which shocked the tower owner. So he became extremely angry with him and explained that he would no longer feel sorry for him and would give Hwang a chance to surrender before it was too late. But the boy will not do this. He will proudly and bravely stand against the demon in battle. Bystrina noted that the young man had achieved a lot in such a short time, but there is a limit to everything. A multitude of sharp thorns instantly grew out of the ground, and the dragon declared that no man could defeat him. This stubborn young man was not so easy to defeat. He looked at the weapon he received as a reward for passing the last floor, but he squeezed it tighter. It was the only thing that could help him in this difficult struggle. The timer shows the countdown of the loading time, and the demon pushes off the ground with its paws, ready to attack. The creature approaches the boy extremely quickly. Its rage knows no bounds. It will not let this pathetic insect ruin everything for him. Bystron shouts that Jae Hwan will still participate in the real game, and by doing so, he makes his situation worse. The timer has reached a round number, and the main character is preparing for the decisive blow. The main character skillfully dodges all the sharp spikes and strikes the enemy. The boy remembers how he defeated all his previous monsters, especially those he encountered on the upper floors. But full of confidence that he would succeed, he dealt another blow to the monster with whom he had been fighting for a very long time. The demon is angry, but he can't do anything. He only begs that all this doesn't happen. Now Bystrina finally realizes that this is not just a reboot, and that he will soon have problems. He cannot comprehend with his mind how this ordinary man was able to accomplish all this. There was another blow and a bright light appeared, as if after an explosion, and the demon suffered more and more. The main character does not stop for a minute. He continues to attack to destroy the enemy. The dragon screams wildly from pity and severe pain, opening its wide mouth full of fangs. Jae Hwan stands proudly and holds his weapon at the ready, but first he wants to clear up a few things. The guy wants this unearthly being to know that people are not just a commodity to be sold. But he added that they were not so useless that they could be digitized in some game at the behest of some demon. People were not things that could be given a price tag. Bystrina turned into a small creature. Hwang poked him with his sword and explained that he would no longer obey his plan. The main character raised his head and knows perfectly well what he wants to do next. He has already thought everything through. So he says that he will completely destroy this place and move on. He will rise higher and higher. Jae-hwan confidently declared that he would destroy this terrible world, and there was not a hint of doubt in his voice. The guy is confident that he can destroy the world created by these scoundrels. Suddenly the ceiling began to crack. Fragments rained down onto the ground, and the roof of the tower collapsed. Demon Bystron ducked to avoid being hit by shrapnel and asked the boy to stop. He pitifully begs not to do this and repeats again that there is absolutely nothing higher. However, the summer hero knows very well that in reality it is much more interesting there. But then he confidently added that he was sent here for a reason, and these words shocked the demon. The guy remembers that on many floors he came across strange inscriptions on the walls, and they interested him. He read about the Tree of Illusion on the walls, and wondered if the Tower of Horrors was actually created by the demon sitting at the top of this tree. The young man was sure that there were also inquiries about the dream demon Mulark, so he continued his search. Hwang asks if they are now at the root of the illusion tree. If that is true, then it also has a trunk. The demon fearfully asks what the warrior is planning, and he explains that he intends to break through the ceiling here. And the next moment he raises his weapon, and a huge stream of energy rushes upward. The system indicated that an unknown error occurred during loading, and then showed that training was complete. Now the guy is in a completely different place, but the poor guy looks very tired. But despite this, Jae-hwan is happy that he finally found exactly what he was looking for. He wanted to be here. This place is not as quiet and calm as it seemed at first glance. It seems that scary monsters live there. The creatures with large mouths sensed the presence of strangers in their territory and were ready to attack. These giant wolves surrounded the main character, but he is not at all scared. He is alone, and there are more than 10 of them, and these creatures do not plan to leave him alive, so they immediately attack. The wolf quickly approaches the boy, his eyes blazing with fury and his huge fangs terrifying. Jae-hwan is not afraid of any of these creatures. He makes a light lunge at it and immediately inflicts serious injury on it. He then looks back and sees another evil monster approaching him. This creature is extremely close to him, but this fact does not frighten the warrior at all. He can cope with it. The creature looks very bloodthirsty and evil, as if this creature was specially created to destroy everyone around it. The protagonist holds his weapon tightly and is ready to defeat this creature. He does not seem to consider it very strong. But against this huge wolf, he uses a medium lunge that literally cuts the monster in two. On the monster's head is a large horn, which is enveloped in a magical yellow glow, looking magical. The boy became curious and decided to take the thing for himself. Hwang easily pulled it out of the creature's flesh. He put the horns of these creatures in the backpack on his back and noted that the monsters here were not very strong. Jae-hwan heard the noise and looked around to see what was going on. Suddenly, some strange creatures appeared and shouted aggressively, "How dare this man do this?" One of them points his finger at the backpack and shouts something, but it is difficult to understand what he wants. The warrior looked at them all carefully, but could not make out what this creature was saying. And then he realized that they were pointing to the horns behind him, so the young man offered to make a deal. He would give up all these things, and in exchange he would want information about what this place was. But the monsters didn't seem to even listen to him, and it was unknown if they understood him at all. They went on the offensive. One of these green monsters immediately dealt a strong blow, apparently thinking that this would be enough for victory. The young man got angry and said that now he would have to kill these scoundrels with bulging eyes. He is ready and willing to proceed with his promise. He does not mince words. Jae-hwan didn't have to spend much time and effort to neutralize them all, since all of his stats were at their maximum levels. Now he is trying to get at least some information from this monster. The young man needs to know what this place is. The guy grabbed 2 antennae sticking out of the head of this incomprehensible creature, and it screams in horror that this is a game. The walker is still trying to get at least some valuable information out of him, but all in vain. The creature uttered a few words incoherently, which were understandable. They said, "Human, kill, now." And the next moment he bit his tongue, and it looked very strange and incomprehensible. The boy tore off the antenna and the creature died. At first they seemed weak to him, but now he thought they were not so simple. Hwang looked at what was left in his hands with surprise and interest, trying to understand what function these things performed. But he decided not to think long and left the antennas on the ground, and went to explore the area. To get a little more information, The protagonist decided to look at other creatures. He saw a small bag and received an information message from the system that it was a small backpack for storing things with a volume of 2 cubic meters. After leaving the tower, the system stopped working, and he thought he would gain access to the other dimensional system. But this did not happen. But fortunately, he at least has access to information, and after examining the bag, he noticed many interesting stones there. The boy examined the stone and was informed that it was a spirit stone, and that it gave him the ability to increase energy. He collected them back into his bag, thinking they might have some value and wondering if anyone made them here. Having completed his search, the guy wondered what to do next and where to go, but he still didn't find out anything about this place. Suddenly, the sword he received as a reward for defeating the ice dragon made itself known. The guy sat down and looked at this thing in surprise, not understanding what was happening to it. And the next moment, the dragon's mouth appeared, as if a ghost was trying to get out of there, or it was a hallucination. It all ended as suddenly as it began. Nothing else happened, and everything just disappeared. The main character props his head up with his hand and tries to understand what just happened. After sitting like that for a minute, he was able to examine everything more closely, and noticing the crumpled paper, he suggested that it might be a map. The guy opened it and saw there a tree of illusions, as well as some other castles, possibly a settlement, and a strange inscription, Chaos. He remembered that the idiot in the tower hadn't told him about this place, so he would have to try to find out for himself. At first, this forest seemed like a very quiet and peaceful place, but these palm trees and greenery create a deceptive impression. A little further away from Jae-hwan, wolf-like monsters angrily open their mouths, ready to attack. Their opponents move towards these creatures fearlessly, quickly, and energetically. It is unclear what they are, but they look very human and seem to know what to do. The girl with red hair looks at the spores with confidence, but her eyes are unusually bright. She threw the blade, probably intending to hit one of the monsters, but something went wrong. Because she stepped on some guy's foot and apologizes, explains that it happened by accident, and promises to change her hunting location. He smiled at her, and when she turned around, it was clear that the man was angry, and thinking about how badly she must be handling the weapon that had accidentally hit him in the knee. The other boys looked in horror at what awaited them ahead and screamed in fear. A terribly angry bighorn, also known as a bighorn, is quickly approaching them. This terribly evil creature with huge fangs and an open mouth runs towards the girl, who does not seem to be scared at all. All this happens near a high cliff, and the people below are trying to prepare for a difficult fight. Hwang watches them from above and comes to the conclusion that this girl looks much stronger than the others, but they don't seem to be very friendly. At this rate, they'll all just die. I wonder how they even got out of the tower with those skills. The man has gathered his strength and is ready to join the battle. He uses his skill, Breath of the Fire King. The girl screams that she will help him and immediately hits him hard on the cheek. She then smiles cheerfully and apologizes again, although this time the guy calls her a whore. The red-haired girl noted that it was very rude to call her that, because she just wanted to help. Hung-nim doesn't notice the monster approaching him with its mouth wide open while he argues with the girl. It seems that the protagonist realized that they would not be able to cope with this creature, especially if they were so careless, so he decided to help. Jumping down from the mountain, Jae-hwan used his sword, made a medium lunge, and easily defeated the monster with one blow. Han-nim seemed to be too close to the monster, so he got slapped quite a bit and he didn't like it very much. There was a lot of smoke, so no one immediately noticed the stranger, only his powerful weapon was visible. Jae-hwan wields a strong and large sword that emits a beautiful blue light. The main character stands proudly on his prey and carefully looks at everyone present. He didn't seem very impressed by what he saw here. These people didn't look particularly strong or smart. They discuss whether everything that happened here was legal and whether they can take Bighorn's body. The man tries to wipe the dirt from his face, and the girl watches the stranger with interest. Someone said that it would take at least 10 people to defeat this creature, and Hwang thought about the fact that the previous creature had 5 horns, so the more horns, the stronger the beast. The girl is still awake, mysteriously and intently looking at the man who so easily dealt with the monster. She doesn't know who he is, so she plucks up courage and decides to approach him. The girl comes up from behind and threateningly asks who he is. The guy didn't expect such a reaction. She then explained that chaos is not a simple world, and no one can defeat Bighorn with just one attack. She asks again who he is and where he is from, but the young man only looks at her with interest. He remembered seeing the word on the map and not being able to figure out what it meant, but now he had a chance to get more answers. Huang turns around. They are standing too close. He stares at the girl and asks what chaos means. The red-haired girl was a little confused, finding herself so close to the stranger. After that moment, they all calmly moved together to new territories for Huang. Hyung Nim asks the stranger again and again. He asks if he is here for long. The guy answers in the affirmative. And then, surprised, he asks if he knows the local language, and the guy replies that he does. The man said, as if to himself, but out loud, that this kind of thing doesn't happen here often, and he found it all a little suspicious. The girl asked if they could really take the body of this monster, and the boy calmly replied that he had no rights to it. She finds him very suspicious because the whole situation is extremely strange. Even though he says he came here through the passage, he killed that monster himself without using any skills. The girl tried to use her abilities on him, but the system gave her an error and indicated that the skill could not be used. She was a little surprised that even her strength couldn't help her stop this guy somehow. The system noted that verification was impossible, and the girl assumed that the guy was probably outside the system. She is very concerned about who this man is and why he came here, so she has several questions for him. So I decided to explain that chaos is not such a simple place, and no one can kill this monster with a simple attack. Then she bombarded the guy with questions, and he looked around with surprise and great interest. But of all these questions and explanations from the girl, only one word, chaos, interested the creator. However, this made the girl very angry, and she asked if he was serious or just joking. And then she decided that maybe he didn't understand what she was saying because she asked who he was. Was it really that hard for him to understand? But the main character explains that he understands everything perfectly and hears perfectly well what she asks him about. The boy remembers his life on Earth, his family and friends, and realizes that his whole life on Earth has lost its meaning after the appearance of the Great Tower. And then, during his life in the Tower of Terror, he made new friends and loved ones. He had many wonderful and very touching memories associated with these people, but after completing his studies, they disappeared like a mirage. All of these people are still alive somewhere on Earth, and he could retain all of their memories if he started the game over. But they won't remember him or their adventures, so this venture will most likely be useless, and they will have a hard time coping with the loss. The guy decided not to tell this whole long and complicated story, and decided to say that he simply didn't remember anything. The girl looked at the boy with affection and asked sympathetically if he really had amnesia, and then she aggressively asked if he really thought she would react that way, and if he could at least try to convince her that he had amnesia. The protagonist noted that he did not say that he had amnesia, and the girl was convinced that it was the same thing, but suddenly, someone asked if he was from the mighty abyss. Just as he was thinking about what they meant, his ice sword suddenly reminded him of itself. His weapon grew considerably larger and opened its dragon mouth as the boy rummaged through his bag. The girl looked at the sword in surprise and realized that this guy had a super weapon. So she comes to the conclusion that it's all about the super weapon and not its mighty power, while the guy is feeding the sword with iron blades. The men nearby look at the super weapon with great interest, as it is a very valuable artifact. The main character is fiddling with his weapon. He doesn't even notice that hungry eyes are watching him. Red is mad at Huang for ruining her assignment. She had a great plan, and she would have done a great job with it. As she thought about this, an idea came to her mind on how to turn this situation to her advantage. Now she talks to the guy differently, explains that she will no longer ask him questions and wants to offer him something. But with a sly expression on her face, she mysteriously asks if he wants to listen to her proposal. The girl introduced herself as Mino and told me in detail about chaos and how everything works here. And then they moved on to discussing the people around her, this suspicious crew of guys called the Red Fox. From her story and transparent hints, the protagonist understood that Mino wanted him to kill them. The girl noted that they would soon get to him, so there was no point in looking so closely at these scoundrels. One of the men noticed that it was getting dark, so it was not worth going further, so as not to disturb the monsters. So they decided to stay where they were and spend the night in the open air in the middle of the forest. Jae Hwan lies under a tree and looks at the map. According to the map, there is a settlement not far from here. The card magically turned into gold particles and disappeared. This is the advantage of the game. The boy lies quietly and plays with these particles. He sharply clenches his fist, trying to catch something. Through the system, the men saw that their guest was in the second stage of awakening, called knowledge, and his energy level was very low. They calculated that his energy level was much lower than their leaders, so they realized that he had defeated the monster only thanks to his weapon. But they know that super weapons can only be obtained in the abyss. These are the branches of the Tree of Illusions. Huang heard everything and realized that these scoundrels were up to something. They would be surprised when they found out that this was where he got this weapon. The tower owner said it wasn't a very impressive weapon, so they probably wouldn't want to hunt for it. The protagonist looks at the stars in the cloudless sky and thinks about how to get to the almighty earth. The Red Fox Legion fighters were already confidently moving towards the boy. Huang realizes that they have already started to implement their plan, and soon everyone will be here. Mino is shocked and asks the guy why he is lying there so calmly, because those bastards are going to come for him now. The girl tries to convince the young man to use his powerful weapon against them. But Jae Hwan calmly turned to Mino and explained that he did not have any weapons with him. He explained that he had lent his sword to someone on the night shift, but the girl was furious and couldn't believe he had done that. He was surrounded by many people. The leader stated that he would find a better way to use his weapon, although the girl noted that even with this weapon, he was a complete zero. Mino is not as simple and sweet as she seems at first glance. She asks these idiots if they really want bloodshed. The main character looked at the girl with genuine interest, and now saw her true nature, and it seemed that he liked it. Instead, all these people follow the orders of their leader, who threatens to kill them. The redhead doesn't wait for Huang to do something. She knows how to stand up for herself. She uses her skills skillfully. The girl throws blades well, and the first two were all convinced of this. And the girl doesn't even think about stopping after them, and immediately finds a new victim. Mino is actually a very skilled and intelligent girl. She holds her weapon tightly and is ready to use it again. The dagger flies towards one of these villains with insane speed and force. The protagonist stands proudly next to her and does nothing, apparently believing that she can handle it herself. And that's true, Mino can definitely handle this bunch of losers on his own. They seem to already realize what they've gotten themselves into and probably regret their decision, but it's too late because they've already made her angry. She smiled sarcastically and stated that by their decision, they had doomed themselves to a terrible fate. Their leader stands behind the rest of the Legion and admits that he knew she was a witch from the start. This became obvious when she unceremoniously set the monster on them. The man frowned and asked aggressively through clenched teeth who had approached the ghost warrior. Mino smiled cheerfully and sincerely and playfully asked what difference it made to him who did it. But she added that these bastards had killed so many newcomers who didn't understand anything that many of the Chaos inhabitants probably wanted them dead. Instead, Heng Nim noted that the ghost warriors would not help these unfortunate people. And then, with one movement, he repelled all the sharp daggers that were rapidly approaching him. The man pulled out a weapon that belonged to Jae Hwan and threatened that this witch would die right there. Although it didn't particularly frighten her, Mino muttered hesitantly, "Was he really counting on just a super weapon?" But the cunning man smiled slyly and explained that he had an ulterior motive. The girl looked around and was a little surprised by what she saw, although she noted that they were all at least level 1 in strength. Now I could see even more people around, hiding behind trees and bushes, waiting for the right moment. The girl explained that she immediately felt that there were many more of them than it seemed at first glance. The leader asked if she really thought he would go into battle unprepared, especially if he had to fight a witch's ghost, and a boy who had killed that monster with one blow. But he would have acted differently if he had known that he would get this amazing superweapon so easily. He wouldn't have gone that far or called so many people for help, but it's already been done. The girl asks in surprise if Black Fox is really here too. It seems like nothing interesting is happening in his life right now. This man, who just now stood out in no way, has now turned into a real monster. He declared with his huge tongue and fangs that she could consider this an honor. Black Fox Clan, who is the head of the Red Fox Clan and holds the 3rd degree, explained that more than half of the clan was gathered here. She is not very pleased with the honor done to her and asks them to wait a little, as they still have so much time to gather here. Mino feels that she can't handle this monster alone, so she turns to Jae Hwan. She doesn't want to admit it, but she has to admit that she can't protect him. So she throws a stone to the boy and tells him to grab it and run, and the boy realizes that it is a terrible stone. The girl explained that it was a return stone, and if you used it, you could move to the nearest fortification or fortress. But she added that she only has it, so he can use it without any problem, although the guy is a little confused. Now he realized that this stone does not return you to the past, it saves you in the present. He immediately remembered his friend from the Tower of Horrors, who did not use this thing. Jae Hwan thinks that he should have given Yoon Hwan that stone, and maybe then he would have survived. A guy asks his new friend if she had the opportunity to go back in time. Would she do it? At first, she was angry because now was not the time to ask such questions, since their lives were literally hanging by a thread. And then she still answered that, of course, she would not return, and this greatly surprised the main character. The witch turned around and smiled cheerfully, noting that she had worked hard all her life. She has nothing to regret, and she will never return to the past, even if she dies in this battle today. This answer seemed to surprise Jae Hwan because he moved closer to Mino and placed his hand on her shoulder. The guy stood next to her and declared that she would not die today, and reached for his weapon. His reaction surprised the girl. She did not expect him to protect her or take part in the fight. Without warning, he threw something to the ground, sending up a column of smoke and blue sparks. Jae Hwan uses his strength and easily deals with the attackers. The Black Fox shouted that he was using the Flame King's 14 transformations. After these words, the monster's hands caught fire, and the swords of his subordinates were engulfed in flames. The protagonist does not appear embarrassed or scared after what he saw. He has a plan, and he is preparing to use the lost spell to get rid of all these fools. The guy copes with all this evil without any problems. No one even has time to understand what happened. The protagonist came face to face with the strongest of them. He tried to wound him with a sword, but the monster held him back with his hand. But this did not stop him for long, as Hwang proved stronger and pierced his clawed hand. And as a result, the boy's weapon passed through the flesh of this monster, although Black Fox did not expect this. It turns out that Heng Nim remained alive, although the head of the Red Fox clan took up residence in his body. Jae Hwan looks back and stands proudly in front of the very scared man. The poor man, overcome with fear, fell on his knees and humbly handed over the weapon to its owner. The remaining members of this gang realized that after the death of their leader, they were powerless here, and quickly fled. Although the main character will not give them such joy, he holds the weapon firmly in his hands and is ready to take revenge. He uses a light lunge and effortlessly destroys anyone in his path. Mino is shocked and very scared. She cannot understand how this is even possible. She remembers how easily he gave up the monster's body, and then she thought he was just a fool. She felt like he didn't understand anything when he bragged about his superweapon. And when he said he just gave his gun to some stranger, she thought he was an idiot with no sense of self-preservation. But everything turned out completely differently. This stranger turned out to be very strong and cunning. When Hwang finished, he looked back and saw Mina with a very surprised expression on her face. She cannot understand who he is and why he came here, and asks him about it again. The guy is in no hurry to answer her questions directly. It seems he likes to maintain a sense of mystery. He smiles at her and cheerfully asks if she has forgotten about him. The warrior replies that she already knows who he is, but this greatly surprises Mino, and her face shows that she does not understand what he is talking about. Hwang teases the girl by asking if she has memory problems. He thought he was the only one with such a problem, but this remark angered her. However, Mino decided not to discuss it further and asked him to return the stone to her, but he admitted that he had lost it. The poor thing is seething with rage and cannot believe that he could lose such a precious thing. They are sitting by the fire and relaxing after a very eventful evening. The young man sits quietly and looks at the stars. It calms him down. He feels peace and bliss. Instead, the girl tries to find her stone in his bag, but it seems to be in vain, and she fails. So she gets angry that all this is happening because of some stranger. The guy noticed that she already knew everything, so there was no need to ask him questions, but she didn't quite understand what he was talking about. Hwang explains that he knows who he is, and looking at the fire explains that he is an ordinary person. He then asks his interlocutor if she is human, and she reluctantly replies that she is almost human. Then the boy thought of something, clenched his fist tightly and replied that it was good. This seemed a little strange to her, so the girl wondered what he was thinking about now. And then, realizing that the guy wouldn't say anything else, she turned away and thought about something of her own. She wondered if it really was necessary to be just a human to become so strong and skilled. The girl asks if he has really forgotten everything that happened to him on Almighty Earth, and Hwang confirms that he does not remember anything. Then she bowed her head sadly and remarked that he was very lucky that he had forgotten everything. Most people here would envy him. And she added that it was obvious how they all ended up there and why. but the guy didn't understand why it should be obvious. But he asks with interest how she ended up here, and the girl stops when she hears this. She gave him a sly look and noticed that he would immediately regret his question as soon as he knew the answer. They achieved their goal. The girl took him to a very beautiful place, which turned out to be the Gorgon's palace. They approach the building and Mino notices that they have arrived at their destination. Huang carefully examines the entire new territory and tries to understand what kind of place this is. The circular space with columns reminded him of the first floor of the Tower of Terror, where newcomers came. The square was completely empty and there was not a soul around, but suddenly a red light came on. And then something very strange happened, which really scared the main character. He didn't expect it. He saw many people suffering, crying from pity or writhing in pain. These were the last seconds of their lives. Mino noticed that there were 1,000 times more of them this time and added, "Does he now understand how she got here?" But frowning, she added in a threatening voice that he should never ask her that question again. The poor people in the round square are still screaming and writhing in pain, and the girl, lowering her head, noticed that they were in chaos in the kingdom of the dead. If you die on the almighty earth, you will go to chaos. But if you die here, that's the end. The soul will turn into nutrients for the illusion tree. At this moment, men in white boots appear and rush to do their job. Their uniforms are white with gold trim, and the captain orders them to line up and escort. They rush to meet people who have just arrived. Their job is to welcome them. The captain wrapped one of the new arrivals in a warm blanket and noted that he looked very weak, which was probably the cause of his death. The captain's name is James, and he was called to point out the two waiting on board. He asks why the girl came through the north entrance, to which she replies that since they are acquainted, she would be glad if he let her in earlier. The captain apologizes, but things have changed, and now everyone who enters the fortress must have their documents checked. Mino looks back and asks if Huang has an older brother card, but the boy shakes his head, indicating that he doesn't have one. The girl understood everything, and looked at her new acquaintance with suspicion. She turned to James and tried to explain in a flattering manner that she had forgotten her ID. Then she handed him a bighorn horn and asked if this one would suit him. It worked. The captain picked up the phone and basically stated that he checked the paperwork and everything was fine. The man asks Huang to show him his documents, but he explains that he has no identification and asks what he should do. Mino looked at her friend and said that if he asked her for help, she would resolve this situation. Instead, James reiterated that entry into the fort without identification was strictly prohibited. Huang briefly replied that he understood them, and the girl looked at him in horror and asked what he was going to do. She thought he would kill all the guards to get inside. The girl knows that he is not quite normal, and seems to have some mental problems, but she doubts that he will ever get to this point. But this picture of him killing everyone appears very clearly before her eyes, like a terrible dream, so she thinks he's still capable of doing stupid things like that, and that scares her a lot. Mino tries to prevent this from happening, so he suddenly stands in front of the guy and tries to somehow convince James. Suddenly a voice comes from the fortress. Someone asks what is going on here. This really scares the man in uniform. The girl also realizes with horror that they are stuck and will now have serious problems. All the boys immediately lined up in a straight line and greeted the man in unison. He seems to be a respected and very serious figure in Gorgon's fortress if he is treated like that. Approaching them is the most famous checkpoint captain in Chaos, North Entrance Captain Carlton the Stubborn. He approaches James and asks him sharply what is going on, and James meekly tells him. The captain rubs his beard and thinks about what to do if this man wants to enter without permission. And then he categorically states that it is impossible. Huang asks why, but the man does not understand why he is asking this. His eyes lit up blue and he read Section 4 of Article 37, which states that if there are problems with identity verification, they have the right to refuse entry to the guest. He used the skill Law of Fortress, and everyone knelt and bowed their heads before the captain. Mino doesn't really like that he used that skill. It seems like those knots are giving her a headache. However, during the lesson, the protagonist holds the sword firmly in his hand, and this skill does not affect him in any way. Huang noticed that the girl was not feeling well, so with one movement of his weapon he easily cut the knots on her head and arms. The boy shouted sharply for him to stop teasing. The captain of the North Entrance, Carlton the Stubborn, could not believe what had happened. Jae Huan stands proudly and stubbornly declares that he doesn't care about their laws at all. And then, without waiting for their reaction, he asks what should be in this certificate. The captain doesn't understand how he managed to untie the knots, but replies that the ID card must indicate the name, status, organization, skills, class, and spirit level. The protagonist replied that in that case he did not need an ID card, since he did not want to confirm his identity. Carlton tries to use the skill Law of Fortress against him again, but it doesn't work. Since this had no effect, the captain declared that he was forced to arrest him on the basis of paragraph 6 of the second article of the serfdom law. But he used another skill against the guest, which is called Silver Shackles. Jae Hwan is chained in silver, but he doesn't look scared. The guy dealt with them surprisingly easily. The chains broke and fell apart. The captain's subordinates are shocked that this guy managed to free himself from the shackles of their respected captain so easily. The man, no less surprised, asks how he managed to do it so easily, because it is impossible to get rid of these chains on your own. Hwang points his finger at Minho and asks if he can do the same as her. This really scared the poor thing, and you can see the fear in her eyes about what might happen to her as a result. She understands perfectly well that in this situation the horn was a bribe, and the chief captain will not like it. But besides her, there is James, who received the bribe, and 2 men who witnessed it. They were also seriously frightened, and cold sweat ran down their foreheads from fear. The girl tried to stop him, but Hwang had already thrown something at the captain at the north entrance. He caught the object in his hand easily and casually, and seemed a little surprised that the boy had done so. The man looks at something in his hand with interest and attention, and Hwang gestures for him to take it and throw it. James is incredibly angry, he shouts how this bastard dared to bribe the captain. However, the man stopped his subordinate and asked the boy if his name was Jae Hwan, and the young man answered in the affirmative. And then he looked him straight in the eye, called him a gossip monger, and said that he had been waiting for him. Minho was scanned by some device and told that her soul was more than 15% destroyed, so she needed to take medicine. The captain explains that her soul has been affected, so he assumes that she knows what to do in this situation. Hwang asks with interest what this destruction of the soul is, and the girl, having taken the medicine, asks if he really doesn't know or understand anything. Soul corruption is a chronic condition quite common among the inhabitants of the house. The soul of everyone who resides here gradually deteriorates and is eventually completely absorbed into the place. That's why the horn of this animal is so valuable, and in the meantime James reports that they have escorted all the newcomers to the village. The bighorn horn is the only thing that can prevent the soul from being destroyed, so this man was happy to receive it. The girl also remembered that thanks to him she received such a valuable horn for free. North Entrance Captain Carlton Stubborn pointed the device at the boy and explained that he would now test him too. It's like some kind of eye-shaped camera that scans a person's face and gives out all the information known about him. The protagonist stands obediently and waits for this thing to tell him something about himself. However, after scanning, she found some error. It seems that this device does not provide any information. The system only showed that the process of destruction of this guy's soul went unnoticed. James and the captain are shocked by this information, as everyone in this city is suffering from soul destruction. And this thing shows 0% destruction, and it makes them wonder who he is. Carlton thought for a second, then smiled slightly and said he understood. The man takes the boy by the hand and explains that he has checked his stone and can now take it back. Hwang asks in surprise if they really don't need this thing, since it seems quite valuable. He addresses him as a messenger of gossip, and explains that the spirit stone is not something to be given to just anyone, but the guy ignores the fact that he is some sort of messenger. But the captain didn't explain anything. He just smiled slightly, and noted that he knew about it. 2 guests entered the fortress, and the captain was asked if they could be let in. Instead, the man asked James if he knew what a spirit stone was, and he explained that it was something that increased spiritual energy. Carlton noted that this was not the only thing worth knowing about this stone, and showed his subordinate something quite shocking. When he took off his white glove, his hand was in a terrible state, and his subordinate asked if it was because of the stone. The captain explained that no one except the messenger of gossip has power over this stone, and only he can bypass the destruction of the soul. Although he doesn't think that this guy is actually the messenger of the gossip, he somehow managed to control the stone. James asks if they can really trust this guy, but the captain explains that he does, deep down. Carlton recalls how he was measuring the level of destruction of his soul, and his subordinate remarked that the device must have broken. But as far as the manager knows, the device is fully functional and can only show this in one case. This can only happen when his soul is the purest of all that exist in chaos. But James does not understand how this is possible. It doesn't matter whether he is the messenger of the gossip. What matters is that he can control the spirit stone, and what to do with it will be decided by the fortress itself. James asked if this was related to the illness of the owner of this fortress, but the captain of the northern entrance doesn't know about this at all, so he has nothing to say. And then you add that I heard that someone tried to let them through by giving a bribe, and this scared the man. Now he doesn't know what to expect. Huang walks around the fortress grounds, looks around and thinks that the streets here are very confusing. He's also concerned about why this girl is following him and who is in charge here. The captain punished her for not showing her ID and for offering a bribe to a security guard. However, Jae Hwan asked to let her go, so the man complied with this request and let her go, wishing her a good day. The guy doesn't know anything about this city, so he decided to just ask out loud if anyone here knew a good blacksmith. He continues asking questions, shows his sword, and asks if he knows anyone who could help him. Instead, a cunning man appeared who seemed to want to profit from the fool. The walk through the city dragged on, and it seemed they had entered some dark alley. It seems that the girl is already beginning to come to her senses after the captain cast his spell on her. Finally, she feels better and asks how long they have been walking and living in this settlement. The protagonist is glad that she feels better, because finally she won't be following him everywhere, so he wishes her luck and says goodbye. But Mino can't believe that he's just leaving her like that and asks him to wait for her. Huang explains that he has entered the fortress, and now he no longer needs help. He looks back at his friend and casually adds that now she will only be a hindrance to him. The guy explained that they were too different to turn their acquaintance into a strong friendship. So he suggests that she go her own way, and this is where their paths diverge. The girl froze in surprise. She could not find words because she was very surprised by his decision. It seems like she doesn't want to part with Huang at all, so she's in no hurry to leave him. Suddenly, a sharp and very loud scream of a girl was heard in the tunnel. She asked the boy to stop. Mino tries to convince the guy that he doesn't know where to go, and that without her, he will definitely have a lot of problems. The young man explained that he could always ask passers-by, but the girl suggested that he ask her, since she knew everything here. Huang seemed to realize that she wouldn't be easy to get rid of, so he seemed to have resigned himself to having her as his companion. Since she had already insisted and said that she knew everything here, he explained that he needed a break now. The girl enthusiastically said that she knew where to find him and asked if she could take him there, to which the guy replied that it would be very appropriate. Suddenly, the guy reached for his bag and said that it looked like they had other things to do first. Now they have to settle some issues with people who are interested in the alien to these lands. They are blocked by guys with sly smiles and asked if he has that beautiful sword that has heat in it or something like that. Mino warns these fools to get out of the way if their lives matter, but the boys don't take her words seriously. She was called rude and warned to watch her swearing. The men explained that the youngest of them had reached adolescence and was highly sensitive to any rude behavior, but they threatened that if they want to get out of here alive, they must pay, so let them give up the sword. Huang calmly replies that he does not agree with their terms, and Mino is shocked by their youngest son. The robbers stand proudly and wait for the right moment to begin their reprisal against these two. But the girl is still under the impression of this overgrown man and claims that he cannot be the youngest and accuses them of lying. The Mountain of Muscles no longer waits for a command from his minions. He quickly approaches them. Approaching the girl, he swung his axe and declared that her rudeness would be punished. But suddenly a sword appeared right in front of her. It seemed that her new friend decided to save her. Huang took away both of the emotionally unstable man's arms in one motion. This shocked and frightened the other robbers, and they froze in their places for a second. The bushes fell at Huang's feet, and he noticed that everything here was very noisy, something he was not used to. The guy holds his weapon tightly at the ready. He knows perfectly well that this fight will not end here. Jae Hwan seems to be confident in his abilities and is not at all afraid of scammers who enjoy profiting from others. He stands with a cold gaze and a threatening voice, calling for them to come forward and begin the fight. Their youngest lies and whines in pain. He no longer poses any threat. The others scream in rage. How dare he raise his hand against their little brother? They are bombarded with threats and curses, and promise that they will never forgive him for this. But everyone comes forward and shouts that they will show them what true friendship and support are. Instead, the protagonist stands calmly and waits for them to approach. He has no doubt that he will easily cope. It didn't last long. His sword was already dirty, and finally there was peace and quiet around him. The girl is delighted with how easily the guy dealt with the attackers. She is impressed and thinks about how strong his other skills are, but he explained that he only knows how to lunge. Mina was surprised at first, but then she remembered that her other friend also only used one skill, but in his case it was defense. And then she asked why he blew off the roof of the house, because she thought that this blow was unnecessary. The protagonist recalls all these events and tries to collect his thoughts in order to try to explain them clearly. Hwang recalls that during the fight, he realized that one of the attackers was using an invisibility skill, and so he just wanted to scare him because he really irritated him. The girl asks in surprise what kind of normal person would destroy the roof of a house just to scare people, but the guy, in his defense, explains that, in his opinion, this is completely normal. They continued on their way, and along the way the girl suggested that the guy name his blows in a very pretentious way, but Hwang did not like it. They reached the Twilight Strike, the most famous and best forge in the entire settlement. They come closer, and one of the blacksmiths asks if they need help. Master Naven explained that they were very busy right now, and if they ordered anything today, they would have to wait a bit. Mino asks why they have so many orders, and the guy replies that only the deputy owner of the forge is on shift today, and they have a lot of work. However, he added that it would be easier for them to buy a finished product than to wait for the order to be ready. At this time, all the craftsmen are busy examining the dagger made from the horn of a quadriga, and they have to make a slot for the handle. His assistants shout to each other that they want to help with the work with such a legendary dagger. Michael Gernard, assistant forge manager, noted that the horn is not easy to break, making it a challenging task. But he decides to play a game with them, and makes a bet that whoever of them can make a hole for the handle in this dagger will become the owner of the forge's assistant for the whole day. The first volunteer is actively trying to do this. He has made every effort, but he is not succeeding. The assistants take turns trying to make a hole, but they can't do it. The horn is very strong. The deputy is angry that these guys are so weak and can't even scratch him. Hwang saw all this and decided to try his hand too, although Naven tried to stop him. He tried to convince the guy that he shouldn't go there, and Michael heard him. The main character boldly enters the forge and asks to be allowed to try his hand. The blacksmith thinks that the boy might think this is an easy task because his assistants failed to do it, but Hwang knows full well that this horn is made of materials that are difficult to work with. He added that it was not that they were losers, but that he was extremely experienced and had his finger on the pulse. What happened next left the deputy blacksmith completely stunned, and he was so shocked that he couldn't even move. The man can't figure out how this guy did it and what tricks he has. Jae Hwan didn't use any tools, but simply made a hole in the corner with his finger. The boy proudly asks if he can now become the deputy head of the forge for one day. But suddenly cracks appear around the finger on the precious and rare horn. The blacksmiths watch in shock, wondering if he could really destroy such a strong material with just one finger. Michael Gernard is furious. He can't believe this idiot broke this thing. He is ready to tear the guy to pieces and shouts that this is a very expensive thing, and how dare he break it. The protagonist justifies himself by saying that he thought he had calculated his strength, and Mino seems to be getting great pleasure from watching all of this. Now the guy understands that it is easy to break it, but difficult to make a hole in a certain part, and he replies that he is sorry. The blacksmith was still terribly angry. He asked if he really thought his apology would help them in any way. He tries to explain that it is a very expensive thing, and now he doesn't know what to tell his client. Hwang promised to compensate for his loss with an even better horn, but Michael finds it hard to believe. The guy put his hand in his bag and tries to find exactly what he needs now. He pulled out the real horn and handed it to the blacksmith, who was shocked to see it. But he explained that it was a horn with 5 horns, and as far as he knew, it was a little better than what they had. The man holds this amazing thing in his hands and realizes that it is a real horn of the 5-horned harnick. The protagonist asks if this is enough and explains that he doesn't have another horn right now. The blacksmith is shocked by all this and remarks that this would be quite suitable. The boy sighed with relief and asked if he could stay in their forge for a while. Blacksmith Michael looked at him menacingly and ordered his assistants to close the front door. The young men, still shocked by what they saw, unanimously declare that they will immediately fulfill his request. Jae Hwan continues on his way, where he is led by the deputy head of the Twilight Attack Forge. There's a sign on the door that their forge is closed, and Mina wasn't invited inside, so she'll have to go somewhere alone. This forge is considered the best in Gorgon's fortress, and since the boy is currently acting as deputy, he can use any tools and materials. The guy modestly thanked him, and Michael asked with interest where he got this horn. The protagonist, preparing to start work in the forge, briefly replied that he had received it. The man asked if he had managed to destroy the pentagram on his own, and the young man confirmed that he had. Huang asked for help, and explained that he needed a sheath for his sword, while the blacksmith thought about how rare it was to meet such a young man. The blacksmith very carefully placed the extremely rare and expensive horn on the table, but he was shocked, and asked if this guy was really going to use Harnack's horn for his vagina. The protagonist pulled a sword out of his bag, and the blacksmith, at first surprised, exclaimed that this was such a weapon. And when he picked it up, he assumed that it was a copy of the Ice Dragon's sword, and added that it was very beautiful and rare.